The harder the conflict, the greater the triumph.
A fiercest serpent may be overcome by a swarm of ants.
Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Age wrinkles the body, quitting wrinkles the soul.
It has
Battle
been a minute.
buddies.
Battle buddies.
It's been a really long time.
Yeah,
But we're adults and we have responsibilities.
a little bit.
How about that game today?
Shit. There was a game today.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
The way it ended?
Sports ball.
Totally, can't believe we pulled it out.
I don't even know what sport's playing right now. Is it women's tennis?
Yep. Crazy how she pulled it out, right?
Yeah.
Only to lose it at the end, right?
Yeah.
Only to win it right at the
I don't know. I have no idea what's happening.
I'm just fucking with you.
Wait,
dude.
what sport was it?
I'm talking about the 49ers.
Oh,
Well, I'm talking about football, I guess I
Football.
should be saying. Yeah. I was going to actually send you a paragraph long text message and be like, hey, copy and paste this to your brother and he'll be really impressed that you're talking about LSU football on
nice.
Saturday. And I'd be like, take credit for it too.
Yeah.
And if he follows up with any questions, just be like, yeah.
I don't know how dedicated he is to LSU football in that he worked on the USS Alabama. So, Roll Tide is a whole thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But he went to LSU, right?
Yeah. But
Because when I met him at your baby shower,
Yeah.
he was watching an LSU game. He was very into it.
I think that some people that go to LSU would not join the Navy just on the off chance that they would have to work on the USS Alabama.
Is that their rivalry?
Yeah.
I knew that. Of course knew that. But yeah, dude, how's life been without recording our podcast? Do you feel like you're the same person?
No.
Yeah. Well, here we are. We're back.
We're back. I've been I looked up some cool facts online about trying to learn more about military. Did you know, and this statistic is true, that there is no cases of mental illness or undiagnosed trauma for soldiers that have enlisted, for enlisted soldiers before they enlisted? It's crazy, right? They all come from perfectly
interesting.
well-adjusted families. All of them.
That's a good point. So
Yeah.
you're saying they don't actually do psychoanalysts they don't psychoanalyze these people before they come into the military and give them a gun?
No, they absolutely do. And my source is don't say anything bad about America.com, but it absolutely is true that we let these people do things and make them risk their lives without knowing it, and they always understand that before going in as 17-and-a-half-year-olds, which is cool. So that's my first stat I just wanted to throw out there.
Oh, I know what you're just quoting System of a Down. This isn't any website you went to. This is just System of a Down lyrics, huh?
This is a made-up thing, but I got a new one, and it is real, and this is a big shock for me. I didn't know how much student loans that all you vets have, from being a vet.
Loans?
Yeah, you guys had to take out tremendous student loans, on par with doctors. Crazy.
Not post 9/11 dudes.
No, all of you. It's statistically I was looking at the stats. It's regular doctors, vets, and then dentists or something like that.
Are you joking?
No, you guys love animals. Talking about veterinarians, guys. It's a bit.
Veterinary vets. Oh, damn it. Look how dumb I am. I am a month away from getting my bachelor's and it went right by me. I'm like, I don't know anything.
What do they have to take out student loans for?
They're paying me. I'm so confused.
All right, let's talk about people dying now.
Yeah, Vietnam. Lovely, lovely place.
So originally we said we were going to do Albany and finish X-ray. I can't do Albany today, or maybe ever.
Okay.
I have all my notes on it. If people like it, we can return to it.
Oh, someone tells me that this is it.
But I was just I was going through my notes and I was like, man, Albany sucked.
Speaking of Albany and sucking and people responding to us, I think we've maxed out our Reddit love.
Yeah. We're starting to go on the other side of that.
They're just like, leave us alone. We get it. You have a new podcast.
That's fair.
So, sorry. Maybe I'll start hitting up MySpace.
Yeah. Friendster.
Untapped resource.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Anyway, so sorry guys. This is our world, and we kind of, do what we can here at Battle Buddies. And the way that this is working is LZ X-ray.
LZ X-ray. Well, that was what the whole thing was going to be anyway. I didn't even know about Albany until I got to the chapter where it's like in Albany. I was like, oh, there's more.
Love it.
Yeah, so.
I love it.
And then it's just really, really bleak. But we can get enough from X-ray.
Funny. Before this episode started, I was telling Kevin that I found a board game on the internet that's LZ Albany, and he said, "Who'd want to play Albany?"
Yeah, Jesus.
X-Ray is the board game I want to play.
Well, it's just like X-Ray has like, we can argue back and forth about how justified the people having the conflicts to begin with were, and like, should we have even been there? But the battle happened, and the commanders on both sides were dope as hell. Like, they really tried to win, and they were competent on both sides. And the soldiers were disciplined. And Albany is like, let's just take away the commanders and see what happens.
All good things.
Yeah. So we're on to day 3. To quickly recap, we were just finishing... I'll just read you guys the last little section of where we were in the early afternoon of November 14th. LZ X-ray is pretty hot right now. So day 3, as night started, Hal ordered Matt Dillon to join him, saying, besides, this battle was far from over, and I now needed Dillon at my right hand to help me control the fight. They needed to work out reinforcements, water rations, ammo, and how to ensure artillery was being sustained to the cut-off platoon. Dillon also was a previous commander of Bravo Company, so he spoke to Savage and his cut-off platoon through the night. To remind our listeners, Bravo Company had that one platoon that was by, was it Herrick? What's that dude's name? Heron. Yeah, and that dude was running, and he just kept running, and he never stopped, and then they got separated. It's Herrick. Yeah, Herrick. And so they are separated. They're like out in the boonies. It's now nighttime, and it's all Hal and Dillon are thinking about. It's just like, what do we do about these guys? Which I understand that. One unexpected development was the refusal of medevac helicopters to take out the wounded. Bruce Crandall recalls, from that day forward, I planned every mission in such a manner that the infantry would never have to rely on anyone but my unit for evacuation of their wounded. This essentially set the precedent for how air and infantry would work from now on. What do you think of the medevacs not coming in because they thought it was too hot?
That sounds like the military.
Does it?
Like, honestly. Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's that scene in the Pacific where the Marines get dropped off on like the island of Pete's Paloo, and the Navy, there's like a huge storm, and the Navy just bounces with all the food, and the Marines wake up and like, where'd the Navy go? Like, they're gone. They're just not here. And they had to like kind of sit around for days without food. It's military shit where it's like, I got to kind of protect my own. I got to do what's right. I got to do what's, I don't know. I can't say ethical, but that sounds like a very war military story. It's like, oh, medevacs can't come in because it's too hot.
That's wild. Because when I'm reading, I'm like, you can't say no. Like,
really?
You're in the military.
Yeah, that's where my mind goes. Yeah. So like, that sounds like some bullshit that would happen in the military.
This is good that I'm getting this perspective, because there's going to be a part way later, and it's just kind of a jokey part. But I was just like, what the fuck? Like, how is this happening?
Yeah, dude, you have to end up having a sense of. I can only imagine the jokes that were happening in the unit when they were like, "Oh, the medevacs aren't coming," and it's like, it's time to smoke half a pack of cigarettes and just make really dark and macabre jokes.
It's crazy that Bruce Crandall existed in this time. Like, thank God for Hal's men. They wouldn't have all gotten out, because he just was like, well, fuck it, I just we will just set a brand new precedent for how helicopters work.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And from now on, like from what I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how it works now. Is like
That's what I was going to ask you when you said that going forward. I was like, do you mean going forward in Vietnam or just period?
it wasn't clear because I think they were assuming that I was more competent than an English teacher and of like my understanding of how the military works. But it made it as was at least for how the rest of Vietnam was going to go. But it made it really sound like this is how airmen work with infantrymen.
I believe it.
I believe it too.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking Black Hawk Down stuff. Like they were going back in.
I can't wait to get there.
Yeah.
And turns out there's a lot of battles.
There's a lot of battles. Roberts Ridge, that was helicopters.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
your cousin was in that,
Yep.
or that's crazy,
There was
dude.
that. Damn. There was 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 that. Damn. The Academy Award winner right there.
Savage is the sergeant.
Sergeant Savage.
Yeah. And he's the guy who's just like he's been just a badass. Like he's been the one radioing all of the artillery by like feel, which is like we were trying to explain that. Like they couldn't figure out their exact location, so the artillery would just like he's like just try and they
Right.
shoot it, and he's like a little bit to the east.
We have 4 degrees
Yeah.
this way.
Don't go too hot though. I think you'll get me if you go any more.
Yeah, that sounds nerve-wracking,
So
to say the least.
that guy's been crazy, and because Herrick died, serving his nation, and Savage has just been holding his troop together. Savage's platoon had a hard night. He had 7 men unhurt with 13 wounded. They received 3 separate raids of about 50 men at a time. This is not to say that the other companies had an easy night. There are a lot of reports of having to lay on the ground in open fields. Soldiers with only a few days left of deployment would get nervous and fire nonstop, risking their positions. So I'm kind of summarizing a lot of this night.
Few days left of deployment.
Yeah, this is happening. So I'll kind of give you more of the anecdote. I forget if it was Charlie or Alpha, but basically they had like a ceasefire so that they could try to understand what was happening and conserve ammo. And they just had a couple people just firing. They just would not stop firing their machine guns. And when they finally like had a officer run over and like grab the dude, they found out the 2 guys had like 3 days left on their deployment, and they were just like, I just want to get home. Like I'm so goddamn close to getting home.
Dude, I can connect with that.
Yes, that's the most human moment.
I had dreams like the week of leaving Afghanistan that I had to stay longer. I was having
Did
nightmares.
you?
Yes.
I believe it.
I was having nightmares that they were like, you have to stay longer.
God.
And then I remember when we were sitting at the airport, I call it an airport. It was not an airport, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was dehydrated. I almost passed out. And we got delayed 2 days. And it was just like, can I just fucking leave, dude? Oh my God. So I can't imagine laying in open fields in Vietnam and I have 3 days left. I can only imagine the anxiety of being like, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I need to do to get out of here.
Yeah. It's pitch black. You're like, this sucks.
I can taste the sweat from the whore and whiskey that I'm
Right.
going to get when I get home, dude. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was rough. And, the Savage's platoon, they're all laying down. We talked about that last time. They're all just laying in like a circle with ammo stacked up around
Yeah,
them.
that's nuts.
And we'll talk about it later, but like they are so fucking disciplined right now. By the time they're found, like they have less than a gallon of water between all the men in the whole platoon. And it's 1,000,000 goddamn degrees and no one's acclimated to it. So
This
they're
is
crazy.
the last day, right?
No, there's gonna be one more night.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, it fucking sucks.
But
this is the rough night. The next day is like the main action.
okay. And so I can get some context here. This is technically kind of the first like major battle of Vietnam, right?
Yes.
And
Well, okay. So the way that it was described by Hal is that this is the first time the regiment of the North Vietnamese have fought since like 1950. That like a regiment strength. So in my mind, that would be the
Yeah,
first battle.
Yeah. Yeah. And bloodiest as well?
I don't know about that.
I think so.
I would imagine there's hundreds
Email
and hundreds
us.
of bodies at the
I
end.
think it's the bloodiest battle, which is, if for those of you who've been to the Vietnam War, if this is the bloodiest battle, yikes.
Yikes.
Yeah.
What were the North Vietnamese doing during the night? They were positioning and coordinating to unleash a massive attack too close for artillery to be effective against them. Specifically, they wanted to attack through Bob Edwards' Charlie Company. In the morning, they moved against the Americans. Edwards was shot, left arm useless, and used his right arm to hold a radio as he continued to issue orders for his company.
His left arm was shot?
Yeah. And he says something like, "I'm hit. My left arm's no good. I'll keep trying though." Like they're tough as fucking nails.
I love it.
And like I had kids this last week like complaining about like they didn't like the bass on the free headphones we were having them use to listen to the audiobook because their reading level was too low. And I'm like, I'm reading also the story, and this guy is like, I'm good.
I'm shot. I'll keep trying though.
Yeah, I'll keep trying.
What does he say in 300? He's like, oh, how's your eye after he loses it? It's okay, my lord. It is only an eye.
The gods said, see me fit to put me with a spare or something like that. That's great. So he's still issuing orders. 2 of his platoons were still in contact with reports that the enemy had not penetrated. 2 platoons were unable to make contact. The enemy approached to within a few meters of Edwards' command. Howe reports that this all took place within 15 minutes. So within 15 minutes, essentially 2 platoons get overrun. They're so overrun that they just can't even radio that they're being overrun. And Edwards is in the command, so he's in the back, and he's like in a foxhole essentially at this point, and they're just getting shot up.
What time of day is this?
This would be
like in the morning.
Yeah, very, very early in the morning.
Like 4 a.m.
I would imagine. Mm-hmm. Which again, this is going to be a totally different North Vietnamese attack pattern than we saw the last time, because now they have like the 66th Regiment together, and they have their officers ready, and they are like forming attacks. They're not just doing the sporadic things that they were doing because they got caught off guard. Like they are sitting there like building up masses of people down the Ho Chi Minh Trail and just sending them out in strategic ways. A little later, at 7:45, the North Vietnamese continued with a very intelligent line of attack. They went after Nadel's Alpha Company's left flank. That was where Alpha Company and Charlie Company linked together. So for context, right, they had just attacked Charlie Company, and now instead of continuing that attack or just attacking Alpha, they're attacking the left flank of Alpha, which is the weak spot because Charlie's been weakened. So like tactically and positionally, like I think they're super sound right now in what they're deciding to do. Hal explains that he was now being attacked from 3 different directions at the same time. Lieutenant Hastings, the forward air controller, issued the code word Broken Arrow. Broken Arrow means that Americans are in danger of being overrun. It activates all available aircraft to support. Hastings explains, we had aircraft stacked at 1,000-foot intervals from 7,000 feet to 35,000 feet, each waiting to receive a target and deliver their ordnance. Which is nuts to think about. Like, I didn't realize how stacked the air was because they weren't getting really shot at that level, and so they could just float around.
That's what's crazy to me when I think about casualties and wins and losses in this war. We had an air force.
Yeah. It's the only reason why we win any of these conflicts.
Right. Yeah. But the fact that overall we still don't, and we have air superiority is bad.
It's not even superiority, it's complete dominance.
That's what I'm saying. They don't have one.
And they don't have anti-aircraft stuff. At least in this, I think they do later on.
Yeah, but just imagine, right? Because they speak about that. Imagine trudging all that equipment through the jungle. You can't do that. No, it's not mobile like that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, they get one guy gets uncooked rice, one guy gets a pot. Like that's where they're at. Howe blames this failure to anticipate this attack on his overly focused efforts for Savage's platoon. The North outmaneuvered Howe against Charlie and Alpha, but their attack against Delta was very ineffective because of Delta's 6 M60 machine guns and some heroics. The story goes that, after running out of ammo, Specialist Parrish fought off up to 100, we don't know the exact number, of Vietnamese with a 45 in each hand. Like a video game character. Yeah. Like, they said he was nuts. Like, he just kept firing his machine gun, he ran out of ammo, so he just jumped up, grabbed somebody else's 45, and just fired with both guns over and over again.
And there was no game over and retry. He
There was
just actually did it.
He just did it.
That's crazy.
They said that the bodies formed like a semicircle around his foxhole at the end.
What?
Yeah, it was weird.
Wow.
So Delta got lucky.
Yeah, so Delta's to the south.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how did America turn this around? Because right now America's losing. Like, this is bad. Like, our cutoff platoon, that advantage that we have, that they couldn't overly flank us because they thought we had a longer battle line than we did. That's not as important now that they're actually grouping and doing concentrated efforts against the Americans. So how did America turn this around? Hal and Dillon had planned out all soldiers to place smokes as close to them as they could at exactly 7:55. All those planes began to drop everything. And they have more access to planes, I believe, because of the Broken Arrow call, too. Like, they're able to activate more of the ordnance.
So from my understanding, right, Broken Arrow is if anybody else is in the air and you hear a Broken Arrow call, you stop what you're doing, you come assist to this.
Correct.
You're being ad hoc, as
Yes.
we would call it. Yeah, okay.
Edwards states that the fire support prevented the enemy from reinforcing when he really could have hurt us, which I think is such a gross understatement of what he's really saying in the subtext, which is like, we were all about to die, like in Charlie Company and that left flank, like it wasn't going to go well. And then here we're going to have like that crazy part, and I think they do this in We Were Soldiers. Lieutenant Hastings missed a call when he was calling out the different napalm strikes, and it hit some Americans. It was close enough for Hal that Hal ends up recounting this as, the fearsome sight of those cans of napalm is incredibly imprinted in my memory. But Hal, cool as ice, told Hastings, don't worry about that one, Charlie. Just keep them coming. This was not the end of the battle because the North Vietnamese were just as trained as the Americans. One soldier in particular killed Sergeant Hostetter and wounded Edwards and Lieutenant Arlington with one automatic weapon behind an anthill. Lieutenant Franklin was hit trying to get to Edwards. Arlington saved his men with a combination of grenades and rifle against that guy. Charlie Company started with 5 officers and 106 men. By noon, it had no officers left and only 49 uninjured men. Just 49 uninjured from like 7:55 to noon.
That's ridiculous.
That's crazy. And the napalm, like the story's nuts because they had 2 planes dropping napalm, and they realize it's gonna get Hal and everybody at command, and so they're screaming in the radio for them to like pull up, like stop, abort. And one guy was able to abort, but the other guy had already released the canister, so they all see the canisters flying at them instead of the enemy.
Oh my god, dude!
Like, it's nuts.
Yay!
Yeah. I think the 2 guys died of their wounds later. I think I don't imagine it went well. For me, one of the big lessons of infantry fighting I've learned over these past several weeks, and especially reading through this, is the strategic use of reserve units. Hal and Dillon decide now to commit theirs in a counterattack in support of Charlie Company's left side. Because it's just something I never think of. Like in video games, you have like, like a wait timer, and like board games, you have them in like an actual inventory, and like then you get the troops. But in a real battle, like here's everything you got.
Yeah.
And I would be playing it like a board game or chess. Like, okay, I move all my pieces out.
Right.
And that would clearly be the wrong move because this was a very smart move, and it ends up helping them a lot. Because I think if they wasted any percentage of those troops in like securing Delta's line before the line fought, then how were they going to get those guys from Delta all the way over to Charlie and Alpha? I think that would have been really difficult.
Do you think that also speaks to them knowing perhaps that there was going to be high casualties?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
All right.
I think so. That's a good point.
Bummer.
That is a bummer.
That's just hard to. That's where my mind goes when you're talking like, man, I never really thought of all those reserves, and it's like, well, I'm thinking that there was all these reserves because they knew that they were kind of walking into a little bit of a death trap.
Yeah.
And it's also, and I just had this thought, when you were talking about the history of Hal Moore and volunteering for these freaking crazy things, like the parachutes.
Right.
It's like, perhaps this was a little bit of a petri dish
Right.
of just like a small scale experiment to see how things would go.
I think it absolutely was.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to use human beings in that manner.
Especially draftees.
Yeah,
They,
and
they literally didn't sign up for it. You know,
Right.
like that matters to me.
they literally did not sign up for it. Yeah, forced involuntary servitude, one
Yeah.
might say.
Around noon, reinforcements started to arrive, but they still needed to rescue the lost platoon. And there's a whole bunch of stuff on how the reinforcements arrive, because some come by helicopter, some literally are like walking and marching over,
Damn.
which is all very interesting. But they still needed to rescue the lost platoon. The main reinforcement was Bob Tolley's 2nd Battalion, 5th Cavalry. So this is like a whole other battalion,
Mm-hmm.
Which was very confusing the first time I read it because I have no idea how battalions work and all that, but getting better. The plan was a complicated swapping of companies between Tolley and Howe. I am not going to bore you with the swapping. It's very, very confusing, and I don't know if anybody would appreciate it. The basic idea was this. Tolley would then launch an assault with 3 companies at the same time to go rescue them. The formation was 2 up, 1 back. Are you familiar with that form? Is it like a standard?
I've never heard of a 2 up, 1 back,
Either
but I feel like I can figure that out.
Yeah. So Alpha Company, which is from Tolley's 2nd Battalion, was on the left. Bravo Company was Hal Moore's Bravo Company.
Mm-hmm.
They were on the right, and they were there because they knew the terrain the best. So they needed somebody to go with them. And then Charlie Company was from Tolley, and they were following right behind Alpha. So I think essentially like they were going to be like the wedge, and then Bravo was kind of telling them where to go.
Got it.
But I don't truly know if that's exactly how that happened or not. There is a lot of stuff too about like the heroics. Like the 7th Cavalry won. They were all ready to go rescue them. Like they would have just all done it, but Hal Moore's like, you guys can't. Like you guys have to take a breather and like get water and get ammo.
Just gung ho.
Yeah. Well, they're hearing on the radio because I didn't emphasize this, but Dylan was the Bravo commander for a long time. So they're like strategic leader next to Hal is sitting there like crying on the radio, talking to the troops that he knows. He knows all those troops by name.
Whoa.
So like everyone that can listen to the radio is like, fuck, like this is so gnarly right now. These guys are just like on the ground, can't move. They have ammo stacked in front of them, and one of the highest ranking guys, arguably like the most important guy next to Hal, is like emotionally talking to them because he knows each trooper by name because he was in charge of them for like a year and a half.
Where was that scene in the fucking movie?
Yeah, right?
Damn.
Right? That's like a heartfelt scene
That's
that
the
really...
Academy Award winner right
Yeah,
there.
seriously.
Damn.
No, Mel Gibson doesn't do that scene.
Which is crazy because that dude can act his ass off.
He can, yeah.
I've seen him play Hamlet, and I'm like, dude, you're legit. Have you seen him do Hamlet?
No, but I believe it.
Solid.
Does he
Solid.
do Lethal Weapon Hamlet? I really like his Lethal Weapon. It's nuts.
Lethal Weapon 4, probably one of the best sequels of all time. Yeah, unbelievable.
B-52 bombers were being used to drop 500-pound bombs to support Tolley. For those of our constant listeners, thank you, first of all, for being constant listeners.
Hell yeah.
500-pound bombs that's what we were doing in the Leyte Gulf. Those were the ones that were taking down ships.
Oh,
right?
Connections.
Yeah, which is gnarly to think about those just being dropped on people.
Nuts.
Those ones are being used to take down like the biggest dreadnought ships we've ever built in the world. And
now we're dropping them on people.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Again, one guy has the pot to cook the rice for 3 people. The bombs were obviously very effective, and General An had time to count 18 of them before he had to like literally dive into his bunker and almost got killed. The platoon and battalion made contact with one another around 3 p.m. To speak on the lost platoon's discipline, every man who could shoot still had ammo after 26 hours of nonstop combat. There were 29 men in the lost platoon, 9 died, and 13 were wounded. All casualties had happened within the first 90 minutes of combat. The reason more wounded didn't die was because of dock loose. That's like when I was telling you about all those docks in this battle are freaking heroes because they're all just jumping on the guys they were bandaging up, which is nuts. And a lot of them died doing that, which is crazy.
That is, Yeah, insane. So an hour and a half was most of it, and then there was a lull after that.
So like an hour and a half was like, yeah, like that big one when they had
Mhm.
to, that's when the gunners died at the bottom of that hill that they're
Mhm.
on to let everybody else run up to that
Yeah.
foxhole. And then they got stuck in that foxhole that they built. I wouldn't even call it a foxhole. They couldn't dig. They couldn't take out their shovels because their shovels were getting shot from when they just laid down and formed a little perimeter.
Crazy.
I can't believe he kept everybody else alive that was injured because when you read through all of the like bullet wounds that the guys get, like it's not one or two, it's a million of
Right.
them. They're like throwing morphine to each other to like try to like help out Doc. It's crazy.
First thing I'm asking for when I get shot, a cigarette.
Yeah.
Give me a cigarette. First thing I'm asking.
Like would it be pretentious if like I asked them to like fill up a pipe with pipe tobacco? Like
As long as you have people that are already smoking pipes, you can ask them for a fucking pipe, dude.
yeah.
There's dudes in the
That'd be
military
nice.
that smoke pipes.
I love smoking pipe.
Smoke them if you got them, dude.
Right, that's it. The day that they say I have, 2 years because
I know, bro. I've been thinking about that ever since you told me. You said once you know your terminal, light them up, bro. That's why I told you if I'm shot, like give me a cigarette, dude.
Exactly. All right. General Knowles informed Hal that they would be pulled out the following morning. So now we're getting to the end of this next day.
Uh-huh.
There's just a ton of conflict this next day, right? The Vietnamese are way more disciplined with, I wouldn't even say more disciplined, but their tactics are a lot better this day. Tully's forces were mixed in as they settled in for the night. What's this guy's name? Didyark?
Oh, I saw that. Yeah. I mean, so
He's a Ukrainian guy.
is that what it is?
Yeah, there's two guys here.
Didurk.
Didyark?
I don't know, dude.
I feel bad because he's a freaking hero.
Right.
But-
so
So there's like these two foreign-born commanders and officers, and they're like hilarious and super, super good at their job, and they like help everybody make it through this next night because this next night is rough. It does not go well. And I didn't truly go through all the gruesome details about them trying to bring all the bodies and all the people back, but they do. They get everybody back from Savage's platoon. I forget if there's casualties along the way.
so this is like a no man left behind scenario.
Yeah, there's going to be no Americans left on this field.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So I have that after action report here.
Yeah.
And they have a cool like aerial imagery of that they took pictures of after this all went down. Just nothing but like potholes from all the bombs that they
Yes.
dropped.
It's
So the
nuts.
fact that they got all of that's crazy. That is a crazy
It is.
fact that you just said.
And
I didn't know that.
It's one of Hal's weird things. Not weird. It's one of his good things. One of his good qualities is how he gets his men to trust him. Spencer's showing me. Yeah, that makes sense, and I'll explain actually kind of their thinking. Like that was on purpose. The way
Okay.
those are set up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the way they're clustered.
I'll post this on our social media for our 4 followers.
Shout out to Mom.
Hey, Mom.
Yeah. So they make it back. It was rough. But anyway, Hal's gonna get pulled out. Hal's super pissed about it. What's hilarious is Hal is pissed that the command got to him because of all the channels of command it has to go to to get from a general to him. He's like, how did nobody stop this command before it got to me and just like silence it? Which is a great Hal moment. Anyway, Didyark, then 27, had commanded this company since May. He was eager and aggressive, this is from Hal, yet totally professional. Over the next 3 days and nights, he would emerge as the finest battlefield company commander I have ever seen, bar none.
Whoa.
So we're not going to go through all of it because some of it has to deal with Albany, and he like keeps people alive in Albany essentially.
Yeah. So I've heard.
Yeah, Albany fucking sucked. The dude was tough as nails and did some amazing things to set up their line for the night fight that he felt they were about to get into. So he essentially was running around. It was pretty quiet at the start of that night, like the late afternoon, beginning of the night. And he's like, this isn't right. And so he's just like running around trying to get into all of his like troopers' heads of like, shit's gonna happen. Like, you have to get excited.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is not how I think I would do it. Like,
No.
my natural reaction would be like, everyone chill, just be ready if it comes, but like take this second for yourself. Like a
You're
teacher,
like,
right?
man,
Like,
this is a hoot.
yeah.
Dang,
He's
that's
just like,
interesting.
get excited, motherfuckers! Like, it's happening.
I could see that for like firefighters get like training to
Right.
like run into a house to get jacked up for that. And man,
I think he made a gut call, and I think he was like, it's gonna happen early, and it's gonna be nuts, and like these 5th Battalion people aren't ready for it. Our 5th Cavalry.
that kind of mentality and getting jacked up for it is the type of people that do sign up to go infantry. So
That's true.
that's fair. Yeah.
So the fighting through the night is like off and on. Nothing like super intense to report. The NVA, the North Vietnamese, they're essentially just like probing perimeter lines. They think from like 10 o'clock to 2 in the morning or so, and they'll see a couple people, but it won't be a lot. At 4:22 a.m., Lieutenant Sisson radioed Didjerk, "I see them coming. Can I shoot at them?" The platoons were under strict fire discipline to conserve ammo. Lieutenant Lund calls Captain Didjerk, asking Sisson, which this is hilarious to me, Spencer, how many people you have to call to get to your commanders. They're like, "Can I shoot? Can I shoot my gun?"
Telephone. Yeah, rules of engagement,
Yeah.
bro.
But just like, it's hilarious that even if somebody's shooting at you and right next to you, you have to be like, "Can I shoot him?"
Imagine if cops had the same rules of engagement.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Lieutenant Sisson, all right. So he was asking Sisson, "How close are they?" When Sisson replied, "I can almost touch them." Myron's immediate response was, "Go kill them."
Yeah, this sounds like a bit from
Yeah,
like
right?
Saturday Night Live or something.
God.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
And that's just a funny moment before some of like the most gruesome fighting that is going to happen the whole X-ray, because it's just brutal after that. Because then the fighting erupts, and the North Vietnamese 66th Regiment attempts to just cross the field, and it's like hundreds of men, and it's set up like so. What they did was the officers of the North Vietnamese, to not get caught out in their planning, they developed really, really intense whistle commands. And so they were grouping men by whistle commands and setting up the go orders based on whistle commands. And I think that really speaks to how fucking gnarly the North Vietnamese were, that they could do that.
They had this shit figured out, bro. They didn't have to fucking sit there and radio 5,000 different people to figure out their next move.
No.
They had whistle commands. That's brilliant.
Yeah. And it was good. Like, their commands are... So that 422, that one was intense. As they try to cross the field, another wave came at 6:27. This time, it went right for Didjerk. Overall, the night attack had failed. It broke against the firepower and professionalism of Myron Didjerk and his officers and men. Hundreds more North Vietnamese soldiers died bravely, doing their best to break through Myron's iron defenses. That was from Howe. So it was the right one to call. So like, they had learned, don't attack Delta right now. Like, attack this dude, attack these weaker lines, attack Charlie's lines. Because Didjerk is setting up essentially on Charlie's line, which is the line they've been having success on. It's the Dry Creek bed one. And so they start going at it. The fighting's gnarly. It's essentially, really brave North Vietnamese running full tilt and just big ol' M60s.
In the dark.
Yeah.
My mind is going to, I wonder if there's any stories of capturing any other, or getting a whistle off of one of the dead Vietnamese soldiers and then just blowing the whistle to try to confuse them because they were going off of whistle blows.
Oh, no, but they were able to figure out that it was whistle commands because they killed an officer and found the whistle.
Right, and then obviously they could hear it. Like, that would be bro.
That'd be fucking
That's
gnarly.
a horror movie right there. Just like hearing all these whistles ringing, like, what the fuck is that? What is that?
Yep.
What is that? And then you just hear rustles of like trees and bushes. Oh my God.
That's
dude.
like when you are playing middle school or high school sports and you and your buddies are all like super undisciplined, and a team shows up like ready to practice. Like they show up and like they do their warm up, and their coach hasn't said anything, and everyone's like, well, we're just gonna fucking lose, I guess. We don't win this one.
That's hilarious that you say that. That's funny.
I try to teach my middle schoolers in cross country. I like it's about mental games when you show up to a
True,
meet. Like,
dude. Don't
you
they
show
say
up
like
and-
75% of the fight is like intimidation?
Oh yeah.
That's funny. Like my daughter is in volleyball right now, and the coach within like the second practice, he was like, "Now, if I'm not here, you guys need to line up and start like hitting the ball to each other and blah blah blah." And he's like trying to instill like have some initiative, have some discipline and do that stuff. And yeah, it's interesting. That shows a good coach and commander or leader.
Yeah. Fuck that. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to think. Because I was reading through all the accounts of the fights of them trying to like hold the line. Like, God damn it. On either side of the line, I'd be like, this sucks.
Yeah, that's not great. It's a fucked situation.
For the other battlefield lines, Dylan and Hal believed they were going to receive an attack from snipers and infantry at first light. Because what had been happening essentially is like after a failed attack from any of the attacks, even the smaller ones, even like the 50-man ones, as they were pulling back, they would pretty much leave a sniper each time. They'd like tap somebody and like, your turn, buddy.
That's hella smart.
Yeah. And so Dylan and Hal talking to each other all the time, like had worked this out. They're like, this must be how they do it. Like as they push, they must just tap somebody, like you go in that tree and you just hang out and don't do anything until they try to advance.
This is while they retreat?
I think so. I think it's like, because they probe, right, with their couple men, their 20 men or 50 men, and then it doesn't work, and then a couple of them retreat, and then essentially they always leave behind a sniper. And we're seeing that with Herrick too. So at 6, but this is pretty intense what they do. At 6:55, they had planned this out. So all their troopers knew to do this at 6:55. So at 6:55, with no warning, all guns, everybody's gun that they had to open fire at the exact same time. Just of where they thought the battle line was going to be. So just into the trees. And it worked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it triggered a premature North Vietnamese attack.
Wow.
So this is crazy because the North Vietnamese earlier had like howled Hal, right, with their battle plans. It didn't work out because of the aircraft, but like they beat Hal on tactics.
Yeah.
And then here Hal's like, he's giving it right back. Like that was a really fucking smart move.
Damn.
After that, it became a job of policing the field and preparing for evac. So there is going to be a lot of like give and take things that happen, but most of what happens for the next several hours is policing battlefields and collecting the dead and wounded. And reading the accounts of like, especially like the the private first classes, like I feel for them because they're like, fuck that. I don't want to go patrol. I made it past 2 nights. I didn't die. I had to go back out into the trees to just look for stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I specifically don't want to look for stuff anymore.
Police calling is the name of the game. They're used to it.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, police calling in the military is when you stand in a line and you all step together and you keep your head down and look at the ground and pick up whatever you see.
Yeah.
The thing on the aircraft carriers, they'll do it in the morning on the launch, what do you call that? The landing pad, the launch pad, whatever you want to call it. The deck, the flight deck. Goodness gracious. They'll walk up and down there and make sure there's no rocks that would like fly up into the police calling happens weekly for people in the military.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's like, yay, police calling.
Well, and I didn't know too that they were also, I think, collecting weapons, because I didn't realize one of the measurements that were still being used, I think globally, to determine how successful a battle was is what the weight of weapons you collect from your enemy is.
Interesting.
'Cause I don't know if that came up in your book on Letty Gulf, but in my book on Letty Gulf, it was all about the weight. How many tons did they sink versus how many tons did the other person sink?
No, not specifically, no.
And
But
I think it's like an antiquated thing, but I think because it used to correlate pretty evenly with your power, your strength.
I kind of like it.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I like it. I haven't heard that, but I do enjoy that.
It wouldn't really be a thing anymore because we can just send, a 5-pound drone in and just kill everybody.
Yeah,
good
warfare
and
is
bad.
so incredibly different now.
But I think this is towards the end of them still measuring success that way. So policing, I bet, and patrolling would be very important at that time.
Do you think propaganda commercials in the future will just be people on their like couch, like controlling drones and like drooling with like Slurpees?
Like Pikachu's, like sweatpants on?
Yes, dude. And it's like doom 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 doom, don't leave home. Doom 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 doom. It just shows a dude chilling on his desk like at home with some lotion nearby.
God damn it.
Like, all right, we're flying into Chechnya today.
There will be a reckoning if we continue this drone stuff.
It seems we're only investing more in that kind of stuff.
I feel nervous for the future because there's always a reckoning for playing your hand too early and playing the hand incorrectly. And like, this is
the fact that we sitting here having a podcast about like, man, look at all this warfare and battle and stuff. But we're in a position where it's relevant because we're not going back to this.
No.
But that's a podcast for another day, folks.
Another day. So they don't finish leaving until around 3 p.m. So it takes them essentially the whole next day to get out. So they're on their third day. Okay. So I want to tell you one quick anecdote before I tell you. There's a funny story about what happened and the ridiculousness of war, but also like the heartbreak of it because I feel for it. Like I think I would have them do the same thing. Anyway, there's these Americans pinned down, right? And this guy's with his buddy, and his buddy gets shot, and he's like, "Oh shit, he died!" And so then Soldier A, who didn't get shot, just runs and like crawls and makes it to his commander, his officer, and he's like, "Soldier B, he died," and they're like, "Are you sure?" Pretty sure. Go back and check. Then he crawls. He's like, "Fuck!" He crawls all the way back. He looks at him. He's like, yeah, "You look pretty dead." And then so he crawls back. And I'm not using names because this is a joke, but this is a real thing that happened. He crawls back, and he's like, "Yeah, Soldier B died. He's dead." And the officer's like, he might not be though. And then I swear to God, some guy who's just off, like on the other side of their little perimeter, little foxhole, is like, "I heard you can put a mirror under their nose."
Asshole. Thank you, Carl.
So someone gives him a shaving mirror, and he's like, and then his officer's like, "Go back and check." So he goes back the third time, and then it just stops, and he's like, turns out he was dead the whole time.
Oh, was he actually dead? Okay, good.
The whole time.
All
like,
right. Goodness
fuck.
gracious. I mean, it's not good.
I know, right? That's what
man.
Anticlimactic, but
all
also
that effort. I was really hoping, man.
The story would be.
He like comes walking back like, "Hey guys, I had a dream somebody put a mirror to my nose or something."
That might have happened in Albany. It happened in one of these two battles.
That's intense. That's a very real story. You can imagine like dating some girl in high school and it's like her dad's Vietnam and he's like, "Yeah, one time I had to like crawl back to like a football field length to check on this and see if this dude was dead like 5 times." And it's like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, bro. Was he dead?" Yes, he was.
Yeah, the whole time.
100% dead.
It must have been Albany because I think they had to leave that guy. Damn, Albany fucking sucked.
So they did leave some guys on Albany.
In Albany. In X-ray, they
not
didn't.
X-ray.
That's why Albany was such a shit show, man. Okay, here is a bunch of stuff I don't understand, and it's equal parts hilarious and very troubling that like this is also the organism that fights and kills people. So Hal and Crandall make it back, and they had made this bet with this guy Mills, another officer, and that if they all made it back, they would go get a drink right when they get back. Like after Hal is awesome. He like shook hands with each guy, like cried to each person and thanked them for what they did. Like he's a stand-up guy. But he also was short. Like he didn't do any speeches that were really long. Like Hal knows how to work enlisted guys because later on, the enlisted guys like get a hot meal. And they're like so stoked, and some fucking commander comes and gives a speech, and it starts raining. And they said they've never been more pissed because they just watched all their hot meals turn to mush in front of them, and they're not allowed to sit down. And they're like, I have no idea what he said. No one has any idea what he said. No one remembers the speech at all. All we remember is watching our hot meal turn to mush. So Hal is smart. He knows to
Was Hal Pryor enlisted? Do you know?
I don't think so. I think he went to West Point and then just went to Korea.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Typically, officers that were enlisted prior to, they're called Mustangs. Those are like my favorite officers.
He sounds like he would be, but I think he was just a weird dude.
Smart,
he's a unicorn.
good guy. Unicorn, yeah.
Okay, so Hal, Crandall, and Mills, they want to get their drink. They all said that they would. It's the night. Hal, Crandall, and Mills went to an officer club to get a drink that night. I have to imagine an officer club in fucking Vietnam headquarter campaign of this like outpost is essentially just either a house that they took over from a Vietnamese person and they put some duct tape on and said officer club, or it's a tent.
Do we know where is the officer club at?
I think it's in Pleiku.
Pleiku? So in the book that I read, Baptism, the officer club was like a taken over hotel on the roof, and they would legitimately were able to like sit there and drink on the roof of this taken over hotel and like watch firefights happen throughout the night.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, the bartender refused to give them the drink.
Oh shit.
Because of some nonsense that I guess only makes sense if you have served in the military. They said it's for like first officer club or like a different type of officer. They said he wasn't the right type of officer. He's the colonel. He's in charge of the whole battalion. But they said they couldn't give him the drink because it's not the right officer club designation. Like, are there multiple officer clubs where you drink?
I mean, so they have the non-commissioned officer clubs. They have NCO clubs.
It wasn't an NCO club.
And then they have the officer clubs. But I mean, for them to have multiple different types of officer clubs sounds redundant.
It sounds weird.
Yeah, that's weird.
Especially if
weird.
you refuse the guy the drink. So
I'd be pissed.
Yeah. Another soldier, Coleman, he writes about it in his book. And what he says is, so Moore unslung his M16, laid it on the bar. Mills and Crandall solemnly followed suit with their 38s. Moore then said, you've got exactly 30 seconds to get some drinks on this bar or I'm going to clean house.
Yeah. I love it. That's a real story?
That's a real story.
Oh my God.
I can't imagine 3 days watching your soldiers die and like...
Yeah, give me a fucking drink, dude.
The drink. Like, I am not asking for a lot here. Hal
Dude.
doesn't strike me as a guy who can drink very often because he probably can't stop.
Right.
He was so fried. He was trying to explain his mental space on that last day evacing. And he said in order to talk, he had to tell himself what to say in his brain and translate it into words. He's like, I don't know how to explain it other than that I was translating English to English. And he's like, I was saying like, you need to say yes, yes. You need to say no, no. Like he was narrating his own actions because he was so tired and fried from what was going on.
Sure.
And like I kind of get that, like, right?
Yeah.
We've all been there, but probably not to that level.
Well, don't they
like,
say after 3 days of no sleep you're like clinically insane?
I would imagine
something like that. Yeah. That drinking story, the bar story, reminds me that when we were in Kyrgyzstan, which is 2 countries north of Afghanistan, there's like an Air Force base there. I can't really, it's not a nice base, but like the Air Force has a base there, and they have like a little club there where they have like karaoke's there and stuff like that. Well, the only 2 branches that are not allowed to have a 2-drink minimum are the Navy and the Marines. So when we were done with our deployment, we would go there and we would drink coffee while we would watch these airmen drink beers and do karaoke night. And I figured out pretty quickly why we weren't allowed to have beers.
Yeah.
Like we would come back from this deployment and if some young Marine had 2 beers in him and he looks around at these airmen and he's like, so this is your guys' deployment?
Right.
I'm like, fuck this.
Yeah,
Get
exactly.
in a fight immediately. Yep. So I was like, that probably got shut down so quick. Putting guns on the bar. You better, put some fucking drinks in this or I'm like cleaning the house. That's just...
There's some stories of the enlisted guys this night getting fucked up. And what they did well, though, is someone locked up all the guns. Like someone took everybody's guns.
Yeah.
And locked them all up, which was...
That's a good part of the story.
That's a good strategy. Yeah. Because there's times in the story, like towards the end, where this guy's like recounting it, and he's like, yeah, and then like someone's yelling at me, and I don't understand what's going on. And he's like, your 45 is chambered, and you're holding it still. And so he convinced me to sit down and that we would safety the gun together.
Whoa.
Like, it was gnarly.
Oh my god, dude. That just like made my heart pound a
Yeah.
little bit faster. Yeah, that's fucking
And he didn't even realize he
terrifying.
had it in his hand.
Of course
anymore.
not, dude.
He was just
It's like part of their bodies. They
Yeah.
like sleep with it. They shower with it. Oh my goodness.
crazy.
Perhaps that's why the service members don't drink overseas anymore.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Well, and I think some of them had to get up that next day and they didn't know to go to Albany. Like, some of them.
They're hungover and shit.
I imagine.
Oh my god, bro.
Yeah, it's crazy. Albany came next, and it was such a shit show of American failure that we will have to return to it one day with renewed energy. The war in Vietnam raged on, and now the North Vietnamese knew the price of victory and were happy to pay it. The terms of enlistment for the North Vietnamese that they volunteered for was victory or death. So that's why we don't have the North Vietnamese stories, like why we don't have their accounts from this battle, besides the commanders, because it's victory or death.
Yeah, right.
So most of them died within, because it was so early in the war.
Wow. Oh damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah. That like really sobered me to like what the North Vietnamese committed to the soldiers, and like they knew it. Like they were tapping each other to stay behind as snipers, and like they were proud to do it.
Do we know what the average age of those Vietnamese were? Like the North
I don't know their average age. I assume very young.
Young.
Yeah.
How it goes, huh?
Before, so we'll go through. We'll let Hal give the final thought, but I want to go through just a couple reactions of soldiers that I collected from the books that I think are interesting, and I think really kind of tells how those 2 nights went, from the second night to the third night, or first night to the second night. Okay, Specialist Ray Tanner. While things were quiet, we had lots of time to think about what had taken place during the day. I think we all became men that day and that afternoon. I don't remember feeling fear ever again. These are just anecdotes that really have stuck with me. Like, I've never been so scared that where I've said, I don't think I've ever been afraid again.
Yeah, that's nuts.
That's a nuts thing to say out loud.
Yeah.
And this is like a memoir thing. You know, like this is later on, he recounts that. Galloway, the photographer, Plumley leaned down and shouted over the noise of the guns, "You can't take no pictures laying down there on the ground, Sonny." And I thought, he's right. We're all going to die anyway, so I might as well take mine standing up. I got up and began taking a few photographs. That's from the photographer. That's crazy. Sergeant Nia. Every time I hear a helicopter, I get all watery-eyed. It's hard to explain. A surgeon, Surgeon Carrara. Surgeon Carrara knelt over Vieira under fire and calmly performed a battlefield tracheotomy without anesthesia or even clean hands.
Oh my god.
The cameramen who filmed it were then reprimanded later on for capturing the stark reality of combat.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Censorship.
They got in so much trouble because they sent it back. They're like, this is
Too much.
like, but I imagine them on the field like, are you doing a tracheotomy? Your hands are covered in mud, and the guy's screaming. Film that. Like, this is amazing. Like,
You're gonna get so much likes, bro. You're gonna get tens and tens of likes.
I feel like they had like a duty, like, this is important. This is a moment that will never be
nuts.
repeated
That's nuts.
in American history.
It is definitely one of those things where it's like, hey, bro, can you put down the camera and help me real quick?
I don't know if I could help. Like, shit. What's interesting though is that I just watched that. When I watched that MASH episode with my dad, it was about how to do a tracheotomy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they made, I think, Radio do one.
Oh.
Or Radar. They made Radar do one. It was rough.
Have you been watching a healthy amount of episodes of that lately?
No, I should, but not really.
They stand?
They do stand. They're
Okay.
awesome.
Okay.
Dylan recalls that Lieutenant Franklin, terribly wounded in the lower abdomen, had been set aside, triaged as someone unlikely to survive his wounds. Dylan was having none of that. So at the point when the medevacs were medevacing and people were starting to get out, I don't know if the medevacs were medevacing, either them or Crandall, but the medics were starting to, like, put like probably gonna die, like M for mortality stuff.
Yeah.
And it had the only reason why it stopped is because Dylan and Hal are such like control freaks that they were watching everything that everybody was doing, and they're like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, why'd you put him down? Like, you put him on the thing." And so they had to keep putting people back on the helicopters.
Oh my god.
I just that with like the medevacs not coming in when they were supposed to, that kind of stuff is terrifying because I don't mind dying for a cause or dying because I have to, but dying because like someone's like, like
Right.
I don't know. That's the part that really.
Yeah,
kills me.
no, for sure.
Sergeant McManus shoved Stacy and myself out of the way. Then we heard an explosion and looked down, and there was Charlie McManus laying there dead. He had jumped on a grenade to save everybody and pushed them all out.
Did he get an award for that?
I believe so. Lieutenant Deal on seeing his friend dead. I did not want to remember him that way, so I turned away and occupied myself with other duties. But I have. That one, Lieutenant Deal really struggled. Like that was like his best buddy, and I think he was in Lieutenant Herrick's platoon, cutoff platoon. And so when Lieutenant Deal finally got to him and saw his buddy dead, there's a lot of anecdotes about him like dealing with that. With that first one, that one really stuck with me. Like he immediately looked away because he's like, I don't want to remember him that way, but I have. Like I have not lost that one brief second, which is just so sad. Then we do have a couple we have one from the North Vietnamese side. So it was a book that a North Vietnamese soldier had dropped. They found a book on a North Vietnamese soldier. It was filled with beautiful writing, beautiful script. It was the jottings of a homesick young soldier. Poetry, notes, letters. Here's a sample. Oh, my dear, my young wife, when the troops come home after the victory and you do not see me, please look at the proud colors. You will see me there, and you will feel warm under the shadow of the bamboo tree.
We talk about this in our Hip Bucket Report episode on the war, where throughout history, a lot of people have gotten letters or diaries from the other side. And it's like reading something from your side.
Yep, that sounds exactly like...
that sounds like something anybody would write in war.
That sounds like what Lieutenant Herrick said when he was dying.
There you go.
Like, I'm proud to have done my duty for my nation or whatever he said.
That's super beautiful.
It is. It's a great poem. Like,
yeah.
It'd be cooler if he got to grow old as his wife. Like, I keep going back, like, I'm so impressed with how both sides are so disciplined and, like, so on top of it. And then you read something like that, like, oh man, he would have made a good dad. You know, like
dude, human. It's the human in us to read stuff like that and be like, holy crap, dude, we're just fighting people that are basically us, man. Like, hey guys, don't be an asshole. Like, hold the door open for people. Don't fight, man.
Ice cream exists.
Ice cream exists.
That's what I tell students all. You know there's ice cream, right?
I told you the other day, bro.
Yeah.
If it weren't for ice cream, I probably wouldn't have been able to quit smoking.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Ice cream's lovely.
It is.
So we'll go. Wait, I have one other thing. So this is from.
Before you read that, Captain Ed Freeman and Major Bruce Crandall, who were the helicopter pilots during the battle, were each awarded the Medal of Honor.
They should be.
2001.
Oh my god! Is that after A Few Good Men? Are We Were Soldiers came out?
Yeah, I think so.
So
within that time frame, we'll call it.
So the movie helped give them prominence.
Probably. Their unarmed Hueys, blah, blah, blah. They were there respectively for their numerous volunteer flights in their unarmed Hueys into LZ X-ray, while enemy fire was so heavy that medical evacuation helicopters refused to approach. With each flight, Crandall and Freeman delivered much-needed water and ammunition and extracted wounded soldiers, saving countless lives. So yeah, they got the Medal of Honor for that.
They deserve it.
Yeah, and then after you read that, I got a little quote from my book that I want to like help tie things up.
Yeah. Why don't you go with yours first?
Yeah, this just is he quotes Samuel Hines from The Soldier's Tale. It's a cool little quote that I kind of wanted to read that I think sums up a lot of Vietnam and just war in general, where it says, "Every generation, it seems, must learn its own lessons from its own war, because every war is different and is fought by different, ignorant young men."
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
This is...
Drones.
Drones. This is from a book called Practicing History by Barbara W. Tuchman. I think she's like a historian and a writer. And she wrote an essay on 1968, so not that long after all this takes place, like a year and a half, right? That'd be
Or like she probably wrote that during.
yeah, March 1968. Well, I think this was 66, right, when this happens, or was it 68?
Find out what the internet says about when the Vietnam War ended.
Well, I know the Vietnam War wasn't over by now.
The Vietnam War ended in 1975.
Yeah, no, but when was LZ X-ray?
Oh, sorry. 1965, November.
Okay, so it is a couple years after that, but this would be right when it's like heating up.
For sure. So if 1965 was like the first battle of November, she's writing this when like the news is starting to cover dead bodies coming home.
Yeah, and it's just like a 2-page thing, and what she basically says is, what are we doing? Like, do we have a reason for doing this? And she's talking about like, why are we in? I thought one of the tenets was don't get in a land war in Asia. We're in a land war in Asia. Like, what are we doing? What's the purpose? And she calls out that like we can't win this war. Like, there's no way to win this war. And then she says, I'll read either her last little part after she says like, this is just a terrible idea. We have no foresight. Like, what are we thinking? So what then can be done? One way of stopping wars, so far only imposed on small nations, is by the ceasefire order of the international community. If enough nations were interested in bringing about peace, there is no valid reason why the UN should not energize itself to issue a ceasefire order addressed to both Vietnams and as to the U.S. This would give Mr. Johnson an out, which he might be wise enough, though it is not a good bet, to accept, if arranged before Election Day. Because her whole thing is, the way that American politics work is that a president that starts a war can't end the war on a failure because he has to get reelected, and he can't.
He has to be held accountable for that.
Right, and he can't damage the party, and he can't damage himself, and so therefore you can't, as an American nation, lose a war as the president. Like, you have to wait for the next guy to do it.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, dude.
That's really insightful. In 1916, like,
it is.
Damn, she's calling it because this is exactly what happens.
What is her background? She's just a writer?
Yeah, I think this was New York Times. This was New York Times.
Oh, whoa.
So, and her solution was accurate, right? Once enough global pressure comes on, America will stop. Because
I want to caveat on that when you're done with this.
Yeah, so I'll tell her last part. Failing that, another course is open. The U.S. could say with dignity and honesty that we had fulfilled our commitment to South Vietnam by giving all the support at our command in money, arms, and lives of our citizens, that from here on we plan to withdraw our men at a given rate, say 50,000 a month, with the parting suggestion that their places be filled by those nations with more immediate interests in the area, for instance, Japan, Australia, the Philippines, Indonesia, and whoever else is sufficiently concerned. If the capacity in them is lacking, then the effort in which we are now engaged is purposeless anyway, and should, if we can summon the necessary courage and common sense, be closed down. Isn't that exactly how we leave anyway? Like, we're like, we did our commitment, because we can't say we won, we can't say we lost, so we're like, peace, we'll just start pulling out now.
Right.
It's exactly, like, pretty crazy reading stuff from the past that actually did predict how it was going to happen.
Yeah, the foresight on that is unreal. It made me think of, I wrote this down while you were talking about when she was talking about the ceasefires.
Yeah.
I wrote down, would we go to war with someone who wouldn't fight back?
Interesting.
That's what that made me think of.
Yeah.
Because she's talking about a bunch of people agreeing upon the idea of like, hey, you don't have to do this.
Right.
Like, technically speaking, like when you think of the word sovereignty, of like you're your own master, like you control your own destiny, and you at the end of the day control pulling a trigger. Would someone go to war with somebody who wouldn't fight back? If you stood toe to toe with somebody and you were about to have a fist fight and the person just became like a vegetable, would you beat them up?
Right.
It's an interesting concept. That's very thought-provoking. I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah. And what you're saying is true. I go back and forth on that all the time because, like, I like to think of myself as a pacifist, but I also am a nonviolent crisis. I was an instructor forever, and like I restrained lots of people and trained many people on how to do restraints and de-escalation stuff. So I know part of it is the luxury that I live in a quote unquote modern enough society to where I can be a pacifist.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But if it's your principle and if it's what, I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah, dude, it's complicated. Very nuanced. A lot of ins and outs. A lot of what have yous.
We'll let Hal have the last quote from the books that we cite. School children, this is how he closed out his book, and I think it's lovely.
Take us out, Hal.
School children no longer memorize the names and dates of great battles, and perhaps that is good. Perhaps that is the first step on the road to a world where wars are no longer necessary. Perhaps. But we remember those days and our comrades, and long after we are gone, that long blue streamer will still caress our proud flags.
That's epic.
Yeah, it's a pretty good ending.
Yeah, man, Vietnam is fucked up. I think what's crazy, the most crazy thing, I think from just kind of contextually where we are in life and what year it is the fact that I actively see Vietnam vets walking around with their Vietnam served in Vietnam like hats and stuff like that. Think about how they were treated. I think about how that they were drafted. There's people alive today that were drafted.
Yep.
I mean, just to think about that, just to put things into context, and you think about what people protest about today in comparison to what they were protesting when people were being drafted.
Right.
Just interesting.
It is. In some ways, that's one of those complicated things because it's so cool that like we are no longer having to protest. Like, stop drafting us all the time.
Yeah.
We can talk about more nuanced, less immediately dire things, but then at the same time, you're like, is this something we really have to protest about right now?
Right. All right. So that brings us to next. Like, are we more civilized?
Right.
And then you and I have already brought up drones. So
yeah.
Like, yeah, are we more civilized? I think perhaps gone are the days of those stories that you were talking about of the dude going around trying to jack up his soldiers to get ready. He's like, they're coming early, and they're like, woo, probably like getting psyched up, slapping each other in the face, just being just crazy dudes. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I don't feel like we're that far away from it.
You don't?
No. I don't think personally the drone type of stuff is long term. Maybe it is. If it is, it's fucking terrifying. But I see that there has to be a rebuttal from the rest of the world of like, what are you guys doing? Like, you can't just do that all the time. And then there's going to be sanctions and there's going to be conflict over it.
Yeah. Because of the way that you and I work, once people forget about Ukraine and Russia, we'll start covering that.
Yeah, right. I gotta let some dust settle. Like, there is no way I can parse. I'm having such a hard time parsing through the Ukraine-Russia thing. Like, is this just straight propaganda from an internet troll? Like, what?
Yeah, well, that's why like dealing with war while it's happening is like, I'm like part of the intel is things coming out on Twitter. Like, come on, dude. No, that's not. No, I'm not gonna be a part of that yet.
It's also the best Parks and Rec joke. Not the best one. They have great jokes, but when they had the city council race. And one of the the moderators is, and we're going to read this tweet because apparently that's something we do now.
Yeah,
flawless.
Dude. Yeah, like that is so true. It's not even funny. But yeah, I suppose when I don't know, man. How have you felt coming out of this and doing our little deep dive into a small portion of Vietnam?
It's nice reading the book because Hal then spends the next million years going to like essentially every person that fought in the war and like meeting their families, especially the ones that didn't make it. Like, and I don't know if it was just officers, but it couldn't have just been officers. Like, he travels like and make sure his families are okay. And they have their little society that meets every year, and there's no dues because they paid their dues in blood. Like,
I love
cool.
that. I love
Yeah.
it. Wow, that's cool though. That he's like a very thoughtful guy.
Yeah, they've tried to. So in that regards, like, I'm happy that at least for this early group, they at least had a community at the end of like I can't talk about it at home, like, so I at least have somebody I could talk to about it, kind
Yeah.
of thing, and that they stayed close. I really feel bad for the fucking North Vietnamese enlisted dudes because they were just as tough as the Americans, but they didn't have fucking airplanes. And
Yeah.
the ones that did survive had to fight for 10 more years.
Yeah.
And they knew it. That guy's poetry was just like, I'm not making it out, clearly. Like, I'm smart enough to know this.
It's crazy to look at it as just what seems like such an avoidable war.
Yeah.
Such a clearly avoidable, like, what truly are we doing here? And then I think that it's perhaps a huge door opening to the American public, to people like Frank Herbert and like all these crazy,
Yes.
like, of just like, wow, it really is as horrible as I really thought it was.
Right.
Like, the government really does suck. And like, they really are hiding hella shit from us and just doing things against public opinion.
Yep.
So Vietnam was definitely important in that manner, to kind of project America into this ideal of,
It's
maybe
interesting.
we can't trust our government still, kind of thing.
It's interesting, too, reading through how the politics in Washington were able to suppress and change the military's intelligence. That was like weird because Hal said he was talking about some other higher ups that spent like 2 or 3 years just beating their heads against the wall trying to like explain that the North Vietnamese are so okay with this cost, and we have correctly mapped out how it will play out over 5 years, and it's not going to be good for us. And Washington is just like not here to hear that.
I can speak from experience that military intelligence should probably be ran by civilians. It probably should not be ran. There's the military,
like an independent or some
Correct.
something, some
Yeah.
kind of outside, not on the oversight. Because then there was this whole propaganda debacle thing about were there Chinese officers, and it's
on the American side.
no, on the North Vietnamese side.
Oh, interesting.
And it ends up being like a funny thing, which sucks because it's part of what escalates the clamping down and the changing of what's happening. But basically, there was like some report that there were like Chinese officers because they heard people speaking Chinese over the radio. And Washington freaked out because they were terrified of it being like us consenting to fighting against China or something like that. So then they start like squashing everything. And it's like this huge thing. And so all of a sudden, like the president is saying where you can bomb stuff, and like it's all fucked up. It turns out General Ann's like, no, we just taught our officers Chinese to fuck with you guys. We thought it would be funny.
Oh my god, dude.
No one in the American intelligence had considered that they were smart enough to know our fears, and they're like, we should just speak Chinese every once in a while to mess with them.
Wow.
I think Hal, after that, just wrote like, mission accomplished.
Yeah. Goodness gracious, dude. That's funny. Trolling.
Yeah.
Trolling for sure.
That's a fog of war. We couldn't see what the enemy was, and so it looked much bigger than it was. Oh my God, it's China. Nope.
You know those people that you see walking around that wear shirts that say like, America, 2-time World War champions. Do you ever want to just go up to him and be like, what about Vietnam, though?
What about Vietnam? I grew up thinking we won Vietnam.
Well, so
I thought we won it. I was like, America's never lost a war.
So you just assumed?
No, because I always heard, like, growing up, like, America's never lost a war. Kevin.
Right.
I'm like, that's amazing.
Okay. So I kind of think that high school, at least when I was in high school, and like middle school, and you're learning about U.S. history,
Right.
I think they kind of gloss over it.
Yeah.
I
I think
don't-
by high school I learned that Vietnam was at least bad.
Yeah, I had a pretty liberal like world civ teacher, and he was like, Vietnam was horrifically like bad, and we lost it.
Yeah.
But I once asked, when I was overseas and I worked with a lot of British people, I asked them, I was like, how do you guys learn about the American Revolution? Like, do you guys learn about that in school? And they were like, no. No, we don't learn about that in school. The American
The American-
Revolution? No, we don't learn about that. So I think it's kind of similar with Vietnam.
Yeah.
Which is interesting and kind of admirable that this Hal Moore, who was a part of it, losing, it was like, I'm going to like educate people about this, write
Well-
a book and go visit it and be a human about all of it.
Yeah. And I think that's at the end, I don't think I necessarily like agree with the war, but I can agree with like Hal's stance. Like there is an old institution called battling and like warfare.
Yeah.
And I'm a part of it. And I'm not high enough to say when we go battle and
Right.
commit war, but when we do it, I'm going to do it the best I can.
Right.
And then he came up against a guy who also believed in that. And then they had an epic ass battle
Mm-hmm.
in the tradition of American history. Not American, the human history.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with understanding that war is necessary sometimes. It just, what hurts the most is when in hindsight you realize that it could have been avoidable,
Yes.
and that there was not good reasons to do it. There was no justification for it.
No.
So that's Battle of LZ. Yeah, Drang. Kevin and I are in a little bit of a trying to figure out where our next step is. We're trying to find our footing here, folks. Trying to figure out what to do next, where we're gonna go.
I'm interested in the Gaul too.
Do tell.
Caesar's campaign against the Gallic
That would be
Empire.
tight.
Yeah, I've been looking at a lot of diagrams on the Gaul and their battling. It's
Yeah.
pretty fucking epic.
I know my brother was like, you guys need to go hit up some Roman Empire
Yeah.
shit.
I've been reading through Caesar's account of his Gallic campaign.
I would be down for that.
Okay.
So basically, listeners, this conversation is something we need to have off air. But yeah, we're gonna figure out where our next step is. But if things have slowed down over the next couple of weeks, that's just because during the fall and winter, he and I both work for a school district, and work is a little bit crazy right now. He's also teaching cross country. Yeah.
Yeah, new job.
Yeah. So we haven't forgot about this.
No, I am enormously proud of our podcast that our parents listen to, and my
Hey
wife.
man, we have like over 500,000 listens.
Yeah,
so
no, we're doing good.
Yeah, dude. People listen, and we appreciate you guys. Thank you for
Seriously.
listening, and we will see you soon. Bonsai.
Bonsai.
Conflict, the greater the triumph.
A fierce serpent may be overcome by a swarm of ants.
Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Age wrinkles the body, quitting wrinkles the soul. Battle buddies.
Battle buddies.